Well, hello! Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. I'm Tobias. This here's Kitty. She's the production staff. We're going to get the show on the road in just a second. But if you like what you're seeing, give it a big old thumbs up and leave us a good old comment. And don't forget to share it with your friends. And as always, if you really like it, subscribe and ring that notification bell. Kitty loves it when you ring that notification bell. Ain't that right, Kitty? Yeah, I know. Stick around, it's going to be a great show. I thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about this knife that I received from BDH a little while ago. I mentioned it in an earlier video when I mentioned the trade that led to me getting the knife. BDH, who is the person who I traded with for this knife, also sent this wonderful card in there and asked a couple questions in there, and also gave me a little bit of information about the knife. But to answer your one question, Bill, yes, I have jumped out of a C-130. I've actually done it 3 times, and I jumped out of a C-123 2 times, one of those times at night. So I'm guessing you can figure out what that makes me. I'm basically a 5-jump Johnny. I never popped my cherry or anything with it. And that was way back in 1978 that I did that. Onto the knife. And here we have the knife. It's an official Boy Scout knife made by Western Cutlery. And the information that I have been able to garnish so far is that Western Cutlery made knives for the Boy Scouts from 1947 to 1978. And they used a couple different tang markings on those knives depending on when they were being made. And I got most of this information out of 600 Scout knives. And unfortunately, that is the only source that I have on these. So I don't have any secondary source to confirm or deny what I found in there. But I have found other information in that book to be correct. I've also found a little bit of information in there to be wrong. And in the case of this knife, I found a little information that is possibly wrong as well. But what I do know is what is marked on the knife, which says here, Official Boy Scouts of America. And on the back side, it just says, Made in USA, Patented. Nowhere on the knife does it say that it was made by Western Cutlery. However, there's evidence, well, obviously, if you look at it, it's an L66 by Western Cutlery. Other companies made a knife similar to this, but there are keys to this that really point out that it's made by Western Cutlery, including Boys Life magazine, which listed the knife as being made by Western Cutlery. Now, one thing BDH pointed out to me before he sent the knife to me was that he felt that the sheath might not be the original sheath for the knife. And after receiving the knife and looking in the book 600 Scout Knives, I would have to agree with him. And first of all, the first clue is this is the way the knife should fit into the sheath, like so. But as you can tell, the sheath is too long. You can actually push it in a good ½ inch more, in which case the snap won't work correctly. Now, you might think that that was just because somebody had distorted the sheath, but according to the book 600 Scout Knives, this knife, the L66, the little upswept skinner, should come with a sheath that has 6 rivets. And as you can see here, this one only has 5 rivets. And it does have the correct marking on it. It's got the BSA first class stamp there, and no marking on the at all on the snap. That's the way the sheath should be, but it should have 6 rivets, and it should be a little bit smaller. And what I think this is, and it plays out correctly according to the book 600 Scout Knives, this is actually a sheath for numerous Boy Scout knives that have a 5-inch blade instead of a 4.5-inch blade. And these were made by not only Western, but Camillus, K-Bar, I believe even Colonial, but also Pal and Remington, all made a 5-inch bladed fixed blade Boy Scout knife. And for example, here we have a Camillus fixed blade that is not exactly a Boy Scout knife. This is the one used by the Army Air Force in World War II. But if you notice, it's got a slightly longer 5-inch blade instead of a 4.5-inch blade. And when you put that knife into this sheath, it fits perfectly. It goes in quite well, and it will snap perfectly and everything else. So that leads me to believe that this actual sheath is not for the knife I have, but actually for a 5-inch long Boy Scout fixed blade knife. So mismatched sheath, but it will do until I can find the correct sheath. And who knows, maybe I'll find a 5-inch Boy Scout knife that needs a sheath. Now back to the knife. We see here, Official Boy Scouts of America. There's no first class symbol on it. It's just stamped that way. And then on the other side it says Made in USA, patented. Nowhere does it say that it was made by Western Cutlery. However, Boys Life magazine from the, I think, 1962 or so does say that these knives were made by Western Cutlery for the Boy Scouts of America and listed as a Western Cutlery knife. And it definitely looks like the L66. Now, one thing you notice about this handle, if you see there, it looks like it's a full-tang knife with a leather grip. But that's really not the case. You notice also it's got a nice little aluminum pommel here with 2 pins. So everything on this really does say full tang with some kind of funky leather grip, but that's not the case at all. Well, let's cut away to actually how this handle was made. Now, normally, when a knife is made with a stacked leather handle, you have an arrangement such as this. You've got the blade on this end, and then you've got a push tang going back. And usually what you'll have is the guard here, and then some kind of washer or something, and then it will be stacked with a bunch of leather washers down the push tang, and then an end cap will be added to the end of it to keep all the leather washers secure. And usually what happens is the leather washers are just like filled with glue and everything else, just jammed on there as tight as can be, and then pinned in place with that the end pommel. And then once the leather has dried and cured and everything, they'll sand it round or whatever way they need to do it. And that's your typical stacked leather handle. Now, what Western Cutlery did was something kind of unique. And what they've done is basically they've made their tang kind of like a tuning fork. So you've got the blade over here, and then instead of one push tang going down, you've got, down the center, you've got 2 tangs going down along the outside, and the center is hollow. And what they do is they have a bunch of stacked leather H's, I guess, and you put the end cap here plus a spacer, and then you just cram a bunch of stacked leather H's down this channel in the middle, and then you secure them with a pommel that is held in place by 2 pins. And so you see that in this knife here. You notice you've got your handguard here, then you've actually got one plastic washer, a brass washer, another plastic washer, and another brass washer, and then you have all your stacked leather handle H's, followed by brass, plastic, and finally the pommel, which is pinned in place, and you can see the 2 pins there. And then once that's all done, they sand it down and get it to the shape they want it to be in. Now, I would have thought that would cause problems along the edge here with it cracking and everything, but it really does not seem to be the case at all. And the leather handle hasn't shrunk or anything because, well, they cure the leather, and with all the glue and everything else, you basically got like a leather handle that is mildew resistant, and you've got all that resin in the leather and everything else. So it makes for a very hard, tight leather handle. and seems to hold up real well. The thing is they use the same kind of arrangement when they put a plastic handle on too. The plastic handles are also just slid in place down that center channel and then rounded and smoothed out and everything else. So that's the way Western did these knives that look like they have a full tang, but really what they have is a tang that is shaped more like a tuning fork that is hollow down the middle instead of a push tang, which is skinnier. So I think this actually makes a little more sense and gives you a little bit more strength in the handle of the knife. As for dating the knife, we really only have two things to go by, and that is right here, official Boy Scouts of America, and then on this side, made in USA, patented. Those are really the only two markings that we can use to determine the age of this knife because the sheath is mismatched. Like I mentioned, the sheath is really for a 5-inch bladed knife. This is one of the earlier sheaths, so we could use that as, maybe conjecture to say that this would be one of the earlier knives of this pattern because it's matched up with an earlier sheath. Later sheaths would have 2 layers of leather here instead of just the 1 layer of leather. But the earliest of these sheaths would have a first class symbol here and no marking at all on the sheath itself. So that would be the earliest ones from the early 50s. This is a sheath that was used in the mid 50s into the early 60s. But as for the knife, the markings on this knife were used basically from around 1951, 52, 53, somewhere around there, all the way up until 1970. Even if the blade edge were still on here, that would not be of any help either because the blade edge did not change during those years either. So the best we can say for the age of this knife is that it was used from somewhere between around 1952, 53, all the way up to 1970. So it's anywhere from like 50 to 67, 68 years old. So really good shape considering. I mean, even if it was from 1969, 1970, you're still talking about a pretty old knife. My suspicion is it's really more likely somewhere between 1957 1965, somewhere around there. And I believe that's also the determination that BDH had for the knife too, that it was either late 50s, early 60s, or thereabouts. But he also said, yeah, it might go all the way up to 1970 or so. So that's what we can tell about the knife. Unfortunately, because the sheath is the wrong sheath, it really, all it can do is offer us some conjecture. It can't offer us any real help in dating the age of the knife. But all in all, you're talking about a well-made knife. All Western knives were well-made. Got a beautiful false wedge up here. Nice grind going on. Nice little upswept design to that 4.5-inch blade. A good distance for the grip on the knife. And you got the nice aluminum pommel back there. So got a good balance on the knife too. I think the balance point is right around just behind. The balance is just behind the guard, which isn't bad at all. So very comfortable to hold in the hand, and all in all, just a really terrific knife. And once again, thanks a lot, BDH. I'm really happy with the knife, and it's going to look really good in the collection of both my fixed blade hunting knives and my Boy Scouts of America knives. So it's one of those things that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Thanks again for dropping by here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I'm Tobias. Kitty here's the production staff. We both want to thank you very much for dropping by and spending a little time with us. We really do appreciate it. And don't forget, if you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Kitty loves to hear that bell. Don't forget, thumbs up or that other nasty one there. And don't forget to leave a comment and share it with your friends. Kitty loves it when you share. Talk to you again soon. Right, Kitty?